Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes based on corporate resilience, and we have our previous guest, and they are very popular in World Talent Economy Forum, especially with their corporate strategy, with their academic guideline, as well as they are come up with different philosophical aspect, which is very much important for World Talent Economy Forum audience. We have our great philosopher, Dr. Ali Goabadi. We have our new guest, guardians. We have Professor Eric, Mr. Mu, and we have our PRBC chairman, Home Stoner. So I want to start with Dr. Ali Goabadi, like if he introduced today's topic, especially resilience. He have huge experience in corporations, as well as he is responsible for California Miramar University, and they are doing excellent work right now. Even yesterday they have a conference. I joined in this conference in Turkey. That was very interesting. And beside that, they are trying to develop a very good relationship in between corporations as well as academia. I want to start with Dr. Ali Goabadi. Sir, can you please unmute yourself?
Thank you, everyone, and I guess very early good morning to you, because I know some of you guys are just early morning hours, but I think it's what, 12:06 Malaysia time, and the rest of the people in uh, India and in Middle East, I guess, very late night. So thank you so much for joining us. Yes, we are discussing the issue related to resilience. Now, resilience is not a new subject. It's not a new topic, and it's been around for a very, very long time. But why has it become more important has to do with this new shock that we have felt all over the world. Otherwise, companies have been dealing with shocks of one form or another for years, and families the same. But this global pandemic, namely COVID-19, has created a shock or a jolt that has never been felt like the way it has been. Yes, you might say we had the Spanish flu 100 years ago, but 100 years ago, world was not as connected and supply chain management was not as integrated as they are today. And Spanish flu did not have China as a major powerhouse in the world arena. So a totally different situation. And that's why, again, and throughout history, this issue of resilience has been paid attention to, but mainly on a personal level. But this time we see it becoming a major issue when it came to the livelihood of a company, of an entity that wants to exist in a global village. And there is a reason we call it a village. See how long it took for the virus to go from Wuhan to USA, and see how it affected different people differently. I guess the villagers, and I don't mean to be disrespectful by any means here, we see that Wuhan had their full pool party where everyone attended, and then suddenly we see that US, we are having the highest number of deaths on a daily basis, one per harbor every day. Now, this has killed, destroyed many businesses, and we believe that it's going to continue doing so. Therefore, the issue of resilience is an issue that everyone needs to deal with, both on a personal and family level, as well as on a professional level. Now, what you will be hearing today is really an aspect of resilience that might not have been discussed earlier, namely in a format that how does it manifest itself within the construct of a business, small and large. Mainly today we'll be discussing on how resilience affects livelihood of businesses on a small level. And small, what I mean are companies that employ less than 500 people. And we'll see how we can go ahead and think about resilience, and it doesn't matter who you are, if you are a employee or if you're a manager, if you're a business owner, or if you're someone who's thinking about starting your own business, you need to be aware of resilience. So today we'll be discussing about resilience, what it means for corporations, how we should approach it, and how we could integrate resilience into different dimensions of a company, namely into its culture, into its strategy, organization, as well as operation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ali. We have our new guest, Madam Farna Georgians. Can you please introduce yourself as well as if you introduce the topics about this uh, corporate resilience, and now we have a lot of challenge how we can create better ecosystem.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Panos Gorgian, DB student in California, Miramar University, and also I am CIO of the university as well. As Dr. Gwibadi mentioned, the detrimental transboundary effect of COVID-19 exhibits an unprecedented circumstances for all organizations and for all businesses. It is very important, profoundly challenging to cope with the consequences of this devastating global pandemic because it has negative economic side effects, and it's very difficult for many businesses, especially small businesses, to survive and prosper. So the topic and the concept of the resilience now is just really pivotal, because without it, you cannot just survive in the market. We know that because of the inherent nature of small businesses and other businesses as well, all of them needs to have a plan, very well-defined plan for adapting according to the environmental jolts. And today we're going to talk about these different aspects of the resilience and how internally and externally organizations and businesses can develop a resilient plan and to be able to adapt to the volatility of the market and all environmental jobs.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, ma'am. We have our chairman from Pacific Rim Business Council. Even I request to our honorable chairman, please introduce your PRBC. Even if you want to share your website from World Talent Economy Forum, we want to introduce your new website. I know that you are developing many things with our audience, because many small organization and big corporation, they want to know more how they can join in PRBC.
Well, the PRBC was founded 33 years ago actually in Tokyo, and spread into the United States, and then permeated throughout Asia. We're all the way from Mumbai to Montevideo in South America. We have recruited over 400,000 small companies, and for the last year and a half, we've combined forces with Miramar University to add all the resources that they had into the resources that we already had to help small businesses connect and grow. And we have been responsible for almost $60 million of FDI, foreign direct investment in Asia over that period of time. And basically our premise for existing is to promote trade, tourism, technology, and cultural exchange throughout the 36 countries in the Pacific Rim.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you. We have our CEO for Pacific Rim Business Council, Mr. Eric. Mr. Eric, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Can you please introduce the activities of PRBC, Pacific Rim Business Councils? Yeah.
Well, the main thing is Holmes Stone, our chairman, said, we have over 400 members that access our global community, which includes the World Talent Economic Forum. among other organizations, are global connections, partnership opportunities, and expertise to build sustainable companies that survive and succeed even in the toughest times. And one of the things we talked about sustainability, there is a direct connection between resilience in the short term and sustainability in the long term. They're both connected and important.
Okay. Mr. Mu, can you please introduce your point of views? Specifically, we want to learn more about uh, at present China's situations in terms of resilience, and we know that China overcome from this situation very well. Uh, can you share some of the internals informations about the China economy right now and how they overcome from the present situation?
Um, so what China did, it's hard to replicate in the West, and that is the exact reason why West is not China. It's the the reason it's so the reason it has rebounded so fast, arguably, is exactly what the Western uh, media or even scholars is actually saying what's gonna make China unsuccessful. Right? The centralized power, the almost ruthless level of surveillance on its own people. But that's beyond the point, because China is just going to be China. What are they going to do about it, right? And they recover so fast. So it in instead of studying how China did it, we might as well treat that as a fact. Right? China already did it. China already rebounded from this whole horrible situation. So what does that mean to the rest of the world? We need to study that. Right? And according to this McKinsey study, by the way, McKinsey is I think is the biggest information source out of all this situation. And if you really look at the research they are doing, they're actually surpassing a lot of so-called institutions, because institutions today are paralyzed because their professors are they refuse to work with the or they don't have the ability to work with the technology that's available for them. But that aside, that's beyond the point. But according to this study that McKinsey did, not this study, the bunch of studies that they did, they actually see a pattern here. It doesn't matter how the rest of the world rebound, China is already rebounding. And what does that mean? That means the supplier of the world is rebounding. So the supply is actually going to go up while the demand of the rest of the world is remaining at its COVID level. By the way, that means low level. And so when you have a low demand and high price, high supply, what do you have? You have higher bargaining power among the buyers. In other words, lowered bargaining power among the suppliers. And since we're all business person here, might think of that as a opportunity or even a silver lining out of this entire thing, and maybe look into opportunities into that. And that's my take for the day.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. As you are expert both in from corporation as well as from academia, my question is that how a organization become resilient in COVID-19 situation? What your strategy want to share with us?
All right, good. I guess I'm going to leave that mainly to, I will answer this, but I will try to leave that mainly to Farnaz Gorgian, because that's what she's working on, and she's been working on resilience. So I will not get into her field of expertise. But let me before getting into that resilience and what it means for corporations, today, companies all over the world are somehow worried now. Why South Asia and why China has rebounded faster than anyone else, it has to do with the mentality. Now, interestingly, we at the West believe that we know it and we have figured it out. And look at the kind of fights we have here that has to do with the different paradigm. Now, why do I say different paradigm, even though it is the established paradigm? Because how we run businesses in the Western world is based on a capitalistic ideology in which you let businesses do their job and you make sure that they adhere to the corporate laws for those companies that are public, and for the private ones, we believe that through taxation and appropriate legal infrastructure, we keep them intact and we make sure that they behave in a responsible manner. But that, to be honest, changed dramatically because of COVID 19. COVID 19 has created a situation where, as Mackenzie was mentioned by Mo, Mackenzie calls it the new normal. Now we're dealing with the new normal. We are in an era which what was normal is no longer normal. Even countries such as USA, which we believe in absolute freedom of the individual, and we do not mingle into the businesses of corporations, large and small, we actually have to uh, uh, save them, right? Stimulus packages, trillions of dollars going into the businesses, asking them not to fire, and many interactions between the government, the federal government, state government, and uh, companies, and even individuals, right? Sending stimulus checks to everyone's account. So, in reality, somehow we were forced to bring the nation into the operation of a company and the livelihood of individuals. I guess very much like what China has been doing for a long time, right? So this is really the situation. Now, this situation actually did increase the power of countries and their ability to go into the uh, day-to-day operations of companies more than one would have ever imagined in a capitalistic society. Now, this for a while it's fine, but what's going to happen, and that's why I wanted to bring to the forefront before getting into resilience, is that fine, we saved some. Fine, some people didn't go under, not because they didn't deserve to go under, but because of this stimulus package, because money was injected into it. It's like, you've heard this, that if you go to hospital, a lot of people don't come back out alive. Why? Because what happens is one sickness, one major shock causes other sicknesses to get a chance to portray themselves to the detriment of the patient. In reality, I believe what COVID 19 has done has sort of taken many businesses uh, into a realm in which they most likely will not survive because they did not adhere to the rules of something called resilience. While on the other hand, we see Southeast Asia and especially China, they actually came here, studied, they took all the experience of the Western culture and Western organizational development theories, and they applied it. And it seems like they are more agile. That's why you see even our, like for example, airline industry compared to airline industry of Middle East, like Emirates or Etihad or Qatar Airways. So in reality, it seems like we are dealing with something that no longer West is the leader of. And the reason for that, number one, we were never resilient to begin with in any format, in any fashion. We furlough easily people. There is this ability here in USA to fire anyone at will, and anyone can quit at will. Whereas in a uh, Asian society, people have more job security. They are more, there is a great deal more loyalty on a part of a particular employee to an employer and vice versa. The Indian effect, many issues like that, which in reality brings a fair amount of resilience. And they thought this was sluggishness, but we see that they are being hurt less than what the companies here in the West are being hurt.
Mhm.
Sorry, I didn't
Thank
mean
you.
to dodge your question, but I'm sure others will discuss this. But I do want to set the stage correctly to know why this is
Thank
much
you.
more important. It's just begun.
Yes. Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Ma'am, we want to know more about resilience. Even World Bank in the COVID-19 situations, they're publishing different reports that maybe 15 millions more poor people we will find in the COVID-19 situation, even in COVID, not only in Asia, Africa, everywhere. And beside that, resilience is the most important factor right now that how we can overcome from the present situation. We want more of your strategic analysis on corporate resilience.
Thank you. Yeah, I have been studying resilience for a while, and under Dr. Guibadi's leadership, I have developed a strategic resilient framework because it is very important to know that small businesses are vulnerable to all these changes, which we call environmental jolts. Resilience can be viewed from multiple interconnected perspectives because we need to be, and each of these perspectives need to be examined from different perspective again and separately to develop a comprehensive strategic resilience framework. We have to just know that the role of the external factors as well as internal factors that affect resilience, organizational resilience. Um, it is very um, important to keep in mind that the organizational strategic decisions, growth, and sustainability are inevitably influenced by all environmental jobs. Um, Something like COVID-19 pandemic and the uncertainty of the future force organizations to develop resilience for themselves and have a resilient plan. And they need to just mindfully cope with these unforeseen circumstances to adapt to the new environment and define a new normal. Because everything will change and you have to adapt yourself and your organization to the new normal, to the new standards. So I have looked at the external factors based on the PESTEL model. PESTEL means that you have to just, as an organization, you have to pay particular attention to critical external factors, such as political, economic, socio-cultural, technological, ecological, and legal factors that might impinge upon a corporation. It is important to know that each one of them can affect your organizational resilience. And then when you just come to the industry that you're operating, it is important to know that even internal factors, there are so many factors that you have domain in the organization that you have to pay particular attention to. I have divided the organization in four important critical domains. The first one is the culture. Culture is very important, and the golden key to a resilient organization is having a resilient culture, which empower you and your organization to just survive and prosper in these challenging situations. And as I mentioned, when you just want to deal with such a crisis, you have to define a new normal for your organization. So you need to just all the leaders and employees, they need to just be innovative, flexible, adaptable, agile, and resilient. So the combination of all of this makes a new culture, a new resilient culture for your organization. It is important to just make a new resilient culture that can face innovatively with these environmental jolts. Another domain, I mean, I have defined different domains. I don't know that if you want me to just talk about it or you want to, we can just talk in different sequences. But all in all, they are very important. I just mentioned the domains, that is culture, strategy, structure, and operations, that each one of them you have to pay particular attention to be able to have a resilient culture and resilient organization.
Thank you, ma'am. We have our new guest, Dr. Stan Fosters. I have a specific point for you. According to World Bank report, June 1, 2020, actually they are focusing on 3 points. Number 1, organizational adaptability in the COVID situations. Number 2, climate actions. This is very important. After the COVID, climate change will be the most important factor for this kind of resilience and other things. And number 3 is innovation is very important. How you measure this 3 point for corporate resilience, and how they take this kind of strategy for their organizational improvement. And we need some good strategy right now.
Well, I would say we had a recent event where we talked about what our company itself, our university, had to go through, and it was very similar to what happened with COVID, and all of these things are the jolt that you're hearing about from Ms. Gushan and Dr. Guyabadi and our whole team. And so you don't know exactly when a jolt is coming, but you have to have that flexibility. So, and all of these factors come into play. For us, we're one of the most highly regulated businesses in the United States. We're under the auspices of 6 different federal departments, and then also we have to maintain very high standards for the quality of our education. So that PESTLE model really affects organizations like CMU. And sometimes when you have bigger organizations, one of our strategic advantages, and I'm just going to use this as an example, where other companies need to develop these type of strengths. One of our strengths for a very long time has been our ability to change, to see things and change without a tremendous amount of bureaucracy involved. And that is very difficult for many, many schools. Most schools have so many layers of management, and you are not allowed to go from one layer of the management to the other without very precise, manners and methods. And when that happens, I used to liken it to steering a ocean tanker versus steering a motorboat, right? You see something's happening and you try to move that ocean tanker, it's not going to move very fast. And that could be the whole reason for its downfall, for its sinking. And I think that's very similar to a lot of the organizations. You have to see these issues coming up, and you have to adapt to them. If you don't adapt to them, you very well may go out of business. Dr. Guyabadi, points out that over half of the small businesses in the world are going to go out of business because of COVID. And unfortunately, they're going out of business because they didn't react quick enough, and they're a small enough organization to have acted quicker and been able to steer away from these things. But they have to in their mindset, and when that mindset comes, it usually steers other changes within the organization. Generally, it's the cultural change. All of those 4 sectors that Ms. Gorgian talked about, all of those things are elements that are impacted by the changes that are necessary. And one other thing that I think that Professor Westridge is going to address, if he hasn't already addressed it before I got in, is the fact that you're looking at aspects that are very damaging to you. How do you handle those in a timely way? And he's had a lot of experience with the various organizations he's been with, where they're combining different ideas. But sometimes you need to have organizations that do the move quickly, that can move quickly, and they don't quite know how. And so I do think that the Pacific Rim Business Council, that's one of the advantages of having multiple businesses. Sometimes you may not know how to do it yourself, but if you look to strong strategic partners or organizations that have a variety of businesses, and they can point you to what other businesses similar to yours did in those key situations, that could be the difference between you making it and you not making it. So I don't know if I exactly answered all of your questions, but I hope I did, and I'm open for any
Okay.
questions after this.
Okay. Thank you. We have Pacific Rim Business Council chairman. He's very experienced. Even he has a huge experience from Asia Pacific. So specifically, there is a question from audience about leadership, how to handle the crisis period in the leadership from the leadership positions. So can you share your experience, because I'm sure that you are facing a lot of challenges in your personal life, as well as you build up Pacific Rim Business Councils, which is one of the largest. And how do you define the role of different
We have a
leaders
very
in the corporate?
simple, we have a very simple slogan here in the West. People don't plan to fail; they fail to plan.
Mhm.
One of the strong attributes of Asian cultures is their view of the future, and they make their planning 5 years and plus. They make their plan, and they stick to their plan. Uh, Unfortunately, in the Western side, that plan changes about every 2 weeks. As well as if you're in a corporation situation here in the United States, that becomes much more vicious in the fact that when I was in the banking business, we found that a lot of these companies that we were taking to the public market, if they didn't show a profit in 3 quarters, they would replace the CEO. Well, that's not planning at all. That's just responding to shareholders' pressure. So as you go along in the disparity between the Western capitalism model and the Eastern way of doing their business, you see there's a dichotomy. And the two of them
Mhm.
just don't seem to meet, as Dr. Gulyabadi was saying. They have complementary models. And when we start looking at the world, and my particular position here is to look at the world perspective in comparison to just one country. When you look at trying to make a universal model that's going to work for everyone, you have to take a little from both sides and then try to meet in the middle. And that's what we try to do over the last 30 years. And now we're facing this pandemic, which throws an additional weight on top of the rest of them. And this one is particularly formidable because nobody knows how to counteract. And you take it's like a Swiss watch, and all the moving parts have to work perfectly. You take the couple of pieces out of that watch and it stops working. Well, that's exactly what's happened here. You've taken over 60% of the planet, of people on this planet, work for a small business. When you take away small business, the world stops, just like that watch. Okay, and that's what's happened. The linchpin that's holding all these little intricate parts together, small business, has been damaged, seriously damaged. And get back on track, we're going to have to fix small business, no matter where it is. We're going to have to do it quickly and effectively. That's the way I see it.
Thank you. Mr. Eric, you are CEO of Pacific Rim Business Council, and you are trying to developing a better ecosystem in Asia Pacific. So how actually they get involved with your Pacific Rim Business Council, as well as what will be the benefit for them for managing this crisis period?
Well, one of the things you need in the crisis is resources, and that's what we have spent 30 years building up, is resources on connections. So we know how to get anywhere to anybody. We know how to have expertise. We have training. So becoming a member is just about going to our website, and it's free. And so that gives you access to just contact us and find exactly the right person that you need. So resources are one of the things you need. Probably more important than resources, though, are the mindset. and it's what Farnaz talked about, which is cultural resiliency. And I spent a lot of time studying the military because the military is in a environment of continual jolts. Very rarely does anything military go as planned and smooth. So the first thing the military does is expect a jolt. So that's the first thing you have to do is expect that jolts will happen. We get complacent and we just don't even want to think about the fact that changes can happen. But in the military environment, you're constantly saying, what's the next jolt? Where's it going to come from? What are we going to do about it? So that is the biggest thing. That was a question on leadership skills. What is the leadership? You need to have a cultural team that is expecting a jolt and thinks about it. One of my favorite talks I ever heard was at a high-level directors meeting for corporations, and they discussed events that almost made their company fail, that nobody anticipated. And they asked the director of Del Monte, how do you plan for things you can't plan against? And what he said is, I surround myself with as many people as I can who don't think like I do, and I listen to them. So that's part of your resilient culture, is the ability to surround yourself with people who think differently, make it so they're not afraid to express those opinions and put that in the shared pool of knowledge. It's really, instead of having a very structured pool of knowledge that's very hierarchy, the shared pool of knowledge is critical to be able to get ideas and see things that nobody else sees. Everyone has a different perspective, and so they're going to see things from that perspective. So that is your biggest warning system. Your people who are out there on the field, people who are talking to customers, people who are working in technology, they're the ones that are going to start putting little warning labels in there. They're going to give you that advanced warning. Those are your sensors to say, wow, something's happening. So your leadership, starting with that first element, the Parnas mentioned, cultural resiliency, is 1, expect a jolt. 2, train everybody to expect a jolt. 3, make sure you have an environment where everybody feels free to talk about jolts. And and then the next level is make sure you listen to them. And when they train pilots, flight crews, to eliminate mistakes, they found most mistakes happen because people either are afraid to speak up, or they're saying something like, I'm not sure that light's supposed to be where it is, and people are ignoring them. So almost always in a jolt to an aircraft, which causes a crash, there's some indication there that somebody's seen. In fact, it's usually more than one indication. And the big thing they train flight crews to do is speak up and listen.
Thank you. Mr. Mu, what do you want to add?
What Eric mentioned.
Yes.
Let me say something. I think the way Farnaz was going is pretty good. She started with culture and what culture of resilience is. I think we should stay within culture, and I think next is going to be strategy, next is going to be structure, and finally operation. Why don't we all stay in that realm? That way, each time we get to a topic, so Farnaz sets the topic and we all follow. Sorry, Mo. Go ahead.
Okay.
This is kind of still a part of culture, but a little bit continuation on what Eric just said, but I'm going to steer it into the cultural side. Real quick on what Eric said. Yes, we need sensors within the organization. We need to treat every single employee or every single member of the organization as a sensor. Sensor of what? What do they sense? Right? Robinson called it the guy who invented holacracy, and by the way, that is the newest and latest structure, but we will talk about the structure later. So he actually argues there are tensions in organization, and what are tensions is what the employees or the people see the organization could be, and where is it now? So if there's a gap between those, the organization is not optimized according to whoever sends it, right? So you need to create a culture where people are comfortable. Like Eric said, they're comfortable to say their mind. They're comfortable to make changes to the organization. And I think that is a huge part of the culture. How do you cultivate a culture where everybody in your organization is actually set out for the good of the organization instead of just checking in, checking out every day, and not checking, clocking in, clocking out every day to get their paycheck. Right? And I guess one of the good things not one of the good things, they did many good things. Zappos did, who is the biggest player in the game, who is taking holacracy to a next level. What they did is they offer their employee a way out. Whenever they are changing their directions within their culture, they make sure that if you are not okay with this, if you don't think this shift in culture is suitable for you, take your money and get out. That's their policy. And to say, that sounds like a pretty risky policy, right? At some point it was risky. At some point, Zappos lose 45% of their employee when they were moving locations. Was that 45%, Eric? When they moved to Las Vegas? I think you have the number better than me. I remember you mentioned that in our discussion. And when they actually implement holacracy, they lose another 18% of it. So it's scary, but it's necessary. So much so, their parent company, Amazon, actually adapt that policy from them. They actually just copied that policy. So that just shows you, as big the behemoth like a Amazon would still offer their employee a way out. So why don't you? Right? So make sure your people are actually on the same page with you when it comes to culture. And that's what I have to say.
And I would like to mention one thing, that building culture is important if you have 2 people or 2,000 people. You can have the same problems with 2 people who don't talk to each other, who don't share, who don't feel this way. In fact, you can even have it with one person when you don't face facts or tell yourself the truth. So this idea of being a sensor, paying attention, putting information, listening, is applicable for tiny micro businesses to huge corporations.
I mean, just to add to what Eric was saying is that, like many places I go as a consultant, and I see they are drowning, they're dying. Usually, finally, you talk to someone and they understand what you're saying, and they come and say, doctor, we totally understand. But what can I do? My partner doesn't understand. I say, okay, get rid of the partner. Says, no, I cannot. Now imagine if the partner is your husband or your wife, that becomes a lot worse. But you'd be amazed. One wrong person in an organization, especially at the decision making, can destroy an organization. And the culture of transparency, the culture of everyone being able to speak, so the power distance should be so small that when it comes to bringing your opinion, you should be able to do it without any fear. You should be very transparent. And usually this requires a fair amount of patience and perseverance on the part of the leaders of an organization to allow people to speak out, to let them know what's wrong, so that fear goes away. And that's very important. That's what we've been seeing over and over, that it is really, and culture is the most essential aspect in a group like this, in any groups I've been in. And usually where things go south, when things go sour, when things fall apart, is where you don't have the right culture. Everyone needs to understand, appreciate, and adhere to the same culture, which trust is the outcome of a place where you can trust one another, you can stay safe by mentioning, and people don't get hurt when you tell someone, listen, you don't know what you're doing, you're going to kill us. And that person takes it and reconsiders it rather than becoming frustrated and firing you or whatever. And I've seen that more than you can imagine.
And I'll say that Over a decade I've spent focusing on startup companies, which is a very changing and jolt-induced environment. And a lot of my friends who created these very successful companies, when you ask them, lessons learned, thinking back, if you had a chance to talk to your younger self, what would you tell them? Many, many, many of them have said, build your culture first, then your business, because most of them built their business and then said, how do we create a culture?
Excellent. Ma'am, how do you want to share your point of view? If I come up with this idea that one startup or one new company launching right now, let's say in healthcare related company, they are launching right now and they need to hire people. So how they fix their HR strategy based on diversified cultural peoples or based on the local community? What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. This is I mean, as we discussed, I just want to say, add one sentence to the culture and go next to the next domain and address your question. So as we discussed, we need to just create a resilient organizational culture that, as Dr. Guabad mentioned, require a fundamental paradigm shift in the thinking process. McKinsey came up with a phrase that we are living in an uncertainty cube, which no one knows what is going to happen tomorrow. And in this uncertainty environment, we have to just have some general directions without details. So it's we should be very agile, adaptable, and flexible. Uh, to address your question about this strategy and how we can, I mean, what type of employee we need or what type of leaders we need in this resilient environment, we have to just pay attention that we need to be innovative, we need to be agile, we need to be adaptive. So we need some people who have high tolerance of uncertainty in the environment. They need to just cope with these changes smoothly. So as Eric mentioned, training is very important, and building, listen, resilience is about building capacity. So we have to just build capacity internally and to be able to cope with the external factors that is out of our control. So it is very important here in this strategy. Leaders play significant role to prepare their organization for adversity, and they need to practice the proactive management of risk when it comes to anticipation of disruptive events. So they need to keep in mind that what type of employees they need in this process and in this journey and in this uncertain journey. We need to just develop a strategy that to build capacity, to be able to respond to adversity in a timely manner and swiftly, because no one just give us amount of time that we actually need, especially small businesses, because small businesses, they learn from their mistakes usually, and usually market doesn't let you to have that opportunity. So you need to just swiftly change and morph according to these environmental jolts. So we need to have a strategy to be able to develop a self-learned organization, self-organized people, to bring resilience to our strategy. And we need to just have create an environment which resilience become an integral part of the strategy making process, resulting to a resilient strategy for organization. If I want to just talk about the strategy and how in the highest decision making echelon we need to have the resilient strategy in our organization, we can just formulate appropriate resilient strategy. Like to address your question, we can invite the right people to participate. We have to just identify all the drivers and our uncertainties and assumption, even unforeseen drivers. We have to just build on it. We have to just imagine all the plausible but dramatically different futures and scenarios. And we need to just have the scenario planning and isolate those strategies that we know that they are going to be useful across multiple possible future, and implement those strategies, building capacity based on those strategies, and then go to the next domain, which is the structure and process.
And there's a
Thank you.
there's a key mistake here that almost everybody makes, and that is on your journey between what Farnes talked about is resilient culture and strategy, is people tend to hire for now. Here's some specific things. I'm going to hire this person. They have very specific requirements. What you want to do is hire people for where you're going to go, and you don't know where that is. So the people you hire now are those people that are going to figure out where you need to go. So you need to hire people to figure out where to go, and then hire people to say, if we're going from A to B, what do I need to get to B? Do I need to train the people that I have? Do I need to outsource with other people, or do I need to hire a new person with these kind of skills? So you can't hire for now. You need to also think in terms of who's going to take you to the next level and hire for that strategy, which is the next phase Farnes talked about.
Thank you. Mr. Homestoner, before starting these sessions, this is very interesting. You come up with the idea and the experience from California. There are diversified cultures, and diversified culture has different story of resilience. So if you share your experience with us, this is very interesting. We discuss before the sessions, and Dr. Ali Goabadi and all of our experts come up with these cultural issues. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of historic.
Yes.
I went from the entertainment business into the media business out of survival myself. I bought a Spanish language radio station in a newspaper back in 1979. And I was now in the Spanish culture, not speaking Spanish or knowing anything really about it. And I had to learn. And what I learned on my own by spending many days in the library, those days we did not have the resources or the computerization we have now. I discovered that the Spanish language was the fastest growing language in North America, and that by the year 2020, this year, there would be 60 million people in this country speaking Spanish as their primary language. Not only was that a phenomenon, but also at that same rate, so would be the Hindi, so would be the Chinese, so would be the Filipinos, so would be the rest of these diverging groups coming into the United States. Now that's back in the 1970s. It's been about 50 years since. So you're talking about a population of between 1976 and 1986 of about 15 million immigrants that came from all over the world, from the killing fields of Cambodia to the wall coming down in East Germany. All of these people converging on the United States in one compressed 10-year period. No period of 10 years before or after has ever supplied more immigrants into the United States. It was my Ph.D., if you will, of learning about diverging groups and immigrating groups into the United States, and I became the expert on CNN 12 times and the Wall Street Journal 12 times. I became well known in that particular industry, so I can tell you all my experience that now, 50 years later, you see the final result. For the first time in history, this year, 2020, 60 million people speak Spanish as their main language, and 49% of the population now is Caucasian, 51% of people of color. Therefore, that's why you're seeing all of the social discord, all of the things happening, because as this power changes hands, there are going to be a lot of interesting scenarios. So when people look at the United States, You look at it in those old 60s and 70s soap operas and caricatures of who the Americans are, it's completely wrong. And until the rest of the world sees the United States as the great social experiment that it is, they're not going to be able to do a good job of doing anything in this country that's going to be effective.
And I think maybe the political environment has to be such that not every state has two senators. So, because still people who migrated, they didn't migrate all over USA. They migrated to some parts of USA. Therefore, you go to the center and you go to the middle, north or south. That's not the America that is today. And that's why maybe when we see the lawmakers who unfortunately are managing are not a good representation of the populace, of the especially active populace. Now, hopefully, we'll see some sort of a change at the upper echelon of the society where you will see a better policy making that is more in line with what US is today than was 100 years ago. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. People outside this country only see a white-dominated USA rather than the USA as we see it and live in it on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. Another point, even though just according to World Bank, like climate change is a big issue right now. Even now, many of you are discussing about policy, very important. We need good policy for climate change, as well as different government from the developing nations. They are working together how they can solve this climate change related things. What do you want to add specifically for this point? Even COVID, definitely challenging, better vaccine and how we distribute this vaccine. This is also important. Besides that, climate change and other big issues. So Dr. Ali, that how do you want to add this point? And you are talking about policy, which is very important.
I think we should let Mo take a jab at that one before I go. What do you say, Mo?
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mo.
Well, climate change, it's almost feel like, when the COVID has, climate change was the big, bad, scary, or man, bear, pig referred to by South Park. That would kill, that joke would kill in a younger audience, by the way. Climate change was the big, bad thing until COVID hits. And once COVID hits, you don't really hear about climate change, not really anymore, right? But is it still there? Yes, California is still on fire every day, and Mr. Vestris can attest to that. His house got the power shut down every day because of the fire, right? So it's still happening, and I don't really care about what label you put on there, and I don't care about your political stance on that, but the fact is, we do have more natural disasters happening every year. What are we gonna do about it? You are strapped on a railway and the train is coming. You don't figure out who to blame, who tied you on the railway. You figure out how to get out of the way of the train, and that's my stance on that. And I think that is a rational way of thinking. Otherwise, no one is gonna be alive to enjoy whatever you create for yourself. Right. And when COVID hits, I actually, I don't think there's much study done on that yet, because we know while we're studying climate change are notoriously slow in progress. I don't think they are the action research type of person, and I don't think action research actually flies in the climate change domain. But with COVID, we actually get a breathing room on climate change. We actually see some changes, right? People are driving less. We are doing less to the environment, hopefully, right? People are staying indoors, and we're consuming less of the stuff we claim that to be the cause of environment. And turns out, if that's the case, if it turns out during COVID we actually see an improvement or even a slowdown of the worsen of the environment, we might have more convincing evidence. We might finally be able to convince more people to actually get on board with the fact that we are on a track that has a train hurling to us. Right? So I think in a way I'm an optimist guy regarding that. COVID might be a silver lining to the climate change situation.
Yeah. So
Yes.
as I think rightfully was mentioned, when we talk about climate change, we're talking about global warming. That's always people are talking about. These are the aspects that are human beings have been emitting greenhouse gases, and there's a large scale shift in weather patterns, and we see it all over the place. But also there have been other issues related to climate change, that is like the unnecessary destruction of our environment due to other aspects of the consumerism. So the issues, when you look at a change on a global scale, global warming and this climate change was happening at a very slow and very non-noticeable fashion, in such a way that people started ignoring it, because it's like cancer. Before you know it, it's too late. But when it's happening, you might not be aware of it taking place. So something that happens slowly without you ever noticing it might become a very uh, pervasive, but yet at the same time something that you might not be aware of. So first of all, climate change had this peculiarity about it, and that's why people did not care as much about climate change as they should have. Why? Because it was happening slowly. It's like old age, it's like disease that is happening slowly and you don't realize it. But one day you see, my God, I can't move my hand anymore. Oh, what is this big lump? Guess what? Now you're at stage 4, but it started long time ago. Or smoking, or many things that have this slow, and we adjust to it accordingly. Before we used to be able to breathe nice and easily, and now you cut easy, and then now you come out and you put a mask. But what Mo was mentioning, that's why we love him, is that something came and just hit us in the face, right? A little thing called the virus, and this virus was airborne, and suddenly forced us to see, oh my God, how fragile our lives are. Now, in reality, I believe COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise, even though, yes, many people have died. I really feel bad. One lost soul is more than one can. But guess what? People have been born and, have been coming to this life and have been living this world and dying on a regular basis. It's a story of life. However, what COVID-19 did for us, brought that home. It took something that would have taken years and years, and took it and pushed it into a format of 10 months. That suddenly we saw, and not just that, it also showed us how fragile we are. Okay, how many people have died? I'm talking about, look at it globally. I don't mean to sound like I don't care about loved ones gone, but I mean, death is a fact of life. However, look, not too many people have died, but look at the devastating effect of COVID-19. COVID-19 made us conscious of changes that are destructive to our existence, our way of living, which is global in nature. And I think what we see, these environmental issues that have been happening slowly, and I mean, look how China used to look. You couldn't see anything in Tehran. I mean, you couldn't breathe. I have asthma, so I knew how bad it is, but people were doing just fine. But what COVID-19 did for us is, because of the short period of time it took for it to become devastating, has taught us a lesson to better deal with something that is devastating, such as global warming or environmental issues. I believe you're going to see, it's not just because Biden is the loveliest guy on earth and he decided to appoint someone on the issues of climate change. No, every nation. You just 3-4 days ago in UK, they had their get together about climate change, and you notice people are not as careful as they should be, but they actually promise that they're going to do something about it. I believe this was a very good issue that brought us home to a place to realize that, listen, things are going bad. It's not just one fire here, one tornado there. It's something that can destroy our way of being. Another thing is that we learn how to quickly cope. Therefore, we might be able to take these lessons learned from coping so quickly with a particular pandemic and apply it to a much more relevant pandemic, which is this issues related to global warming and this environmental destruction that is happening in front of our eyes and we don't notice it. So I believe it's been really a blessing in disguise.
Thank you. Thank you. Ma'am, what do you want to add? Because you are expert in resilience, specifically for the climate change. Yeah.
Sure, I
And
mean,
one point I just want to add, sorry if I interrupt you. This World Bank report, actually, we share in our comment sections. So those who want to do research, I'm sure we have many young people, they can share, like do some research on this report. So ma'am, sorry for interruptions. Yes.
no worries. Yeah, Dr. Gurbani really talked about the awareness that we need to have, because one of the things about the resilience is just building capacity, raising our awareness, seeing unforeseen risks and threats in the environment outside, environmental factors that affect all of us. So one of the things that we have to just pay particular attention to, and just we have to become resilient, is about the earth that we are living on. So this is just like inevitable if we just don't pay attention to the details of and take it for granted that it is there and it's going to be there forever. This is exactly the biggest mistake for organization as well, because they think that, okay, now we are living in a good situation. Now the organization is doing good, is doing well. So who would even imagine like 1 year ago that COVID-19 can have this detrimental effect on everything, on economic situation, on people's livelihood, everything. So we have to just become resilient. It's not just about the strategy, structure, culture. We have to become resilient. We have to just see our future, see the threats, see the risks, and try to just have different scenarios. Try to just do something now that we have time to deal with it. Because as Dr. Gurbadi mentioned, maybe it's just too late when it comes to the future, and we are not prepared for that.
Thank you. Dr. Stan Foster.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been aware of climate change for decades. And I think one of the most staggering symbols of climate change is to see the disappearance of a rainforest. And this is what Barnes is doing. The rainforests are our planet's lungs. Okay, so it's not just treating something on one portion and not the other, but on an economical scale. Who are we to tell the nations, particularly in South America, that are developing, that don't cut down the rainforest because it's the rest of the planet's lungs? Okay, there's that ability that it has to be a global solution. Now, it didn't help, I don't think, that President Trump, when he first took office, got the United States out of the global, peace accord, a climate accord, and because that was kind of doing the ostrich, putting your head in the sand and trying to say, well, our carbon footprint isn't as bad as as other countries that are out there. So it's not one type of a strategy. It's a massive strategy. But I do agree that we're probably not going to face this the way we should until we see a catastrophic event on the horizon. It's just our nature. We would have never done a vaccine this quickly. We marshal all of our technology skills on a specific laser-like focus. And I don't see that, because it's not enough unity in the message, that we're going to face it like that. It's just, there's too many people and there's too many political aspects in each one of the countries, that factor into, are we going to really put eliminating our carbon footprint first, right? Or can we make excuses to delay it for another 5 years or 4 years or 8 years? And I don't think, I think it's good to be aware, but I don't think it's going to be there until, just like, when we see an asteroid coming to Earth and it's going to crash into us. Now, we're going to put a lot of technology into trying to find out weapon systems that can blow that off course and not hit us too. But it's that type of an event, and I don't see it happening in the next few years. I think there's so many other issues until COVID goes away. All of the attention is going to be there, and then after that, is climate change going to move up to position number 2? I would hope that it would, but for all these other reasons, I don't think it's going to.
Yes, Mr. Eric.
So we're kind of moving from resilient culture into strategy. And when you look at strategy, you have to look at it in different ways. The first thing is this idea of react. What do we need to be reacting to right now? What is those things that we are paying attention to? Like California right now, it's fires. Or fires. In other places, it's storms. So you have to, with your smart people, start looking at what do I need to worry about right now, and specific threats, very specific threats. The next level is saying, well, what are the non-specific threats? Because we don't know. So how do you handle a threat in general? And we're doing a lot of this ourselves because we put more and more people and we put them in inherently unsafe places. I did a hurricane evacuation instruction for Norfolk, Virginia. And one thing I discovered in writing this disaster preparedness instruction was that people were building houses on land that was brought by the previous hurricane 60 years ago. In other words, that land wasn't even there. It was only there because a storm brought it. Now let's put houses on it. It's about 3 inches above the water line. And you say, well, if a storm could bring that in, it can take it away. So there's some threats that you can look up, and we're making those threats worse, but they're threats that we don't know, people or not paying attention to. When the levees in New Orleans suddenly disappeared and flooded everything, that was something people knew for a long time, but didn't pay attention. So you kind of have to, on one hand, look at specific threats. Right now, you have to look at how do you handle threats in general. If a threat happens, how do you do that? And then the third level of that is, well, how do we keep doing that in the future? What is the continuity between what we're doing right now, handling threats in general, and continuing to be able to handle threats for decades to come? Because you can run out of that and get a threat that you cannot handle. I mean, you can wait too late. You can't handle that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Just to add to that, I
how do
lived
you
in
want?
New Orleans.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to add what Eric's comment about Louisiana. I lived in Louisiana for many years, and they kept getting money every couple of years from the federal government to shore up those levees. But guess what? This expense and that expense, and they were just pushing it under the rug until this catastrophic storm Katrina came, right? And then it just devastated it exactly what all the models were. So you're absolutely right there, Eric.
Thank you. Mr. Homestoner.
Yes. Question?
Yes. Can you please add some point on climate change, specifically from your experience?
Well, I'm a partner in a company called the Green Alliance International, which is an environmental company. So what we have discovered over the last 18 years is that almost 70% of the pollution that's created in our planet isn't created by the Dow Chemicals and the IBMs of the world. It's created by the little guys, the guys that burn dirty oil, guys that buy cheap fertilizer, the people that throw plastic bags full of unrecyclable materials alongside the road. Those are all of these things are done by small business. So if you're going to start something, start at the root cause, not just this PR campaign to debug the big corporations who already have their own internal mechanisms in place and being overseen by the government. Go after the little guys that are the responsible. One of the biggest problems in our earth today is agriculture. They're one of the biggest culprits. Nobody ever talks about agriculture, but it takes 2 acres of ground to grow one dairy cow. Okay, the methane that comes out of the cattle feed is higher than any factory of any coal burning factory there is on the planet. But nobody's paying attention to the agriculture because it's so much more evident when you look at a manufacturing facility. The biggest culprit of all is urea-based fertilizer. Urea-based fertilizer, urea is a byproduct of petrochemicals. Urea is put in every ounce of fertilizer that the farmers throughout the world are using because it's the cheapest. They can afford that fertilizer. Organic fertilizer is expensive and they opted out of that. So where does that go? That goes into the ground level, goes into the aquifer, and goes straight into the plant systems. So everything you eat has got some residual effect of urea fertilizer. These things are all culminative because nobody pays attention to the little guys. Let him do it. That's no big deal. He's only throwing away a few bundles of plastic bags full of hazardous waste. This has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed in a big way. That's one of the things that I started this whole organization to do, is to try to stop that. And I've been trying to do it my whole life. But there's only one of me. And now we have the university as our partner that can help us get the word out and teach people, you've got to change this. Only you can change this. These big corporations, they're not the responsible parties. You are the responsible party, and you have to change it. You have to change it now.
Thank you. Dr. Ali Goabadi. Yesterday you finished one of the conference, and I attended the conference. I saw from Mr. Stan Foster's presentation, like when you join as a leader from the to this university, California Miramar University, you do more focus on fourth industrial revolutions. And for maintaining this, like managing these problems right now, we need to be more innovative. We need to be more industry driven, and we need to create a lot of solutions. So what do you want to add for this innovative industry, and how we can solve these different kind of climate change related issues, beside that corporate strategies, beside many more things happening right now? So we want your deep analysis on that particular point.
Again, okay. First, I think we should put another meeting for environmental crisis, because that in itself is deserving, and therefore we shouldn't just combine it into resilience. Now, the fact that resilience is the issue we need to discuss, and obviously environmental disasters at least will continue to be the driving force after this COVID-19, yes, from that point. But I believe that this particular issue is a very important issue. Not even one, maybe many different sessions need to be dedicated to discussing different aspects. However, technology is not the same when we talk about the world. We have three type of countries in the world. One, countries that are advanced countries such as USA, or Germany, you name it. These are countries that have gone to a level that we can call them now, they are part of the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0. And then we've got a majority of countries that are still in a third industrial revolution. And then obviously most of the underdeveloped or developing nations are pre-industrialization, let alone Industry 2.0. So they are somewhere around Industry 2.0. So first there is this dichotomy. But what we know is that Industry 4.0 has in it the type of agility, the type of adaptability, and the type of mechanisms in which would allow organizations to grow, adapt, and deal with environmental jolts easier. Now, just keep in mind, we got the largest company in the world is Aramco of Saudi Arabia. Why? It's the country. I mean, we're talking about oil, the largest oil producing country in the world, and it's around 1.8 trillion dollars. But look at after that, number two, three, four, five, six. All of them are newcomers. They have no oil whatsoever, right? Apple has no oil, and it's almost at 1.4 trillion. Amazon doesn't have oil. Look what's happening. The new industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, has created phenomenal changes in our way of interaction, in our livelihood, in the way we do business that cannot be ignored. Now, why is that again related to resilience? Because again, Industry 4.0 could also have another discussion, so we just don't brush over it. Is that when strategy makers are developing strategies for their organizations, they need to know how the world moves and not just being fascinated by the latest paper and latest issue. It's not a fad. It's understanding specifically what business, where, under what environmental situation, specifically in relationship to the role and the place of technology in their survival, and then coming up with an appropriate technological innovation that makes them more resilient. Again, we're talking about resilience here. Resilience means
Mhm.
what? Everyone said the ability to be able to take a punch and still stand up. Resilience, my area of expertise is control theory. That's all we do. We design resilient structures, resilient airplanes, resilient robots, resilient cars. Resilience means you take a hit and you continue doing something. As a matter of fact, resilience at the highest level, philosophical level, is that when you get a hit, you don't come back to where you were. You go even better than where you were. So goes the saying of Nietzsche, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. That's why Mr. Stoner is stronger than all of us. He's been hit so many times and he didn't come back to zero. He came to a better place. Therefore, he's more resilient than all of us put together. And I just didn't call him old, I just called him resilient. So, in reality, what we're talking about, technology and understanding the role and place and type of technology in relationship to a particular business you're doing in a particular area of the world, considering your partners globally and the type of technologies they use together is how you strategize when it comes not just to about what technology to use or what technology to invest in, but how to understand technology as a potential means to being able to create a resilient structure, resilient organization. And that's why understanding technology, not from a book, but from a holistic point of view, that you as a company, you as a person, you as whatever your interest and that you means to you, exists within this whole realm of Industry 2.0 to Industry 4.0. You'll be amazed how different countries are. How and another issue what Dr. Foster was mentioning is that We as human beings need to come together and understand that we actually live on the same place called Earth, and we're much more connected than we can imagine, which goes back to what Mr. Stoner was saying. Really, the responsibility lies with individual. So corporate social responsibility is something corporates are doing. I don't care for what reason. I'm not going to get into that. But I believe individual social responsibility is at the core of everything we need to concentrate on. So you, my brother Sharif, who live other side of the world, and I, Ali, living on this side of the world, actually are living in the same world that is much more integrated than we could have imagined. Yes, we may not tell someone not to cut their trees, but we should tell someone not to cut the trees. Imagine if what would happen in nature, let's say in our body, that my lung decided to do it its own way, and then my brain decides to do it its own way, and my hand, we would not have a body. We have a crazy person who's punching himself and suffocating and doesn't want to, So, what in reality is happening in the world? We need to be natural. We need to go back to the basic definitions. And I think that is where our strategy should lie, meaning in line with who we really are, where we really are, what abilities, what capabilities, what strategy development is much more difficult than people tend to think about. And usually, as Dr. Foster said, they either don't have money or they have more immediate need that a top level, C level manager at the company might say, you know what, they ain't got money for strategy. And that's why they're always dealing with operations rather than the future. But future only is uh, possible to be prosperous if we strategize correctly. Hopefully, I didn't talk too much. Sorry.
Mhm. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Ma'am, what do you want to add? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, Dr. Kuyabadi talked about the main aspects of resilience, meaning strategy, structure, and technology. I would like to elaborate more a little bit on the structure part because based on what I've studied, I've found that in addition to culture and strategy, structure is really important because usually during a crisis like such as COVID-19 pandemic, organizations normal operation and structures may alter due to the change in the market expectation and demands as well. And we can just see in the e-commerce and how they have changed and how they just try to meet the demands in the market. So, as Dr. Guevara mentioned, that a resilient organization engage talented manager in taking responsibility for business continuity and managing the business operation in a resilient way. If we want to just elaborate more on the resilient structure, it has been very controversial to just come up with one solution. But one of the structure that fit in this situation is just holacracy structure. The holacracy is, as Mu mentioned, actually introduced by Zappos and Tony Hsieh, is just a new method of organizational government which substitute the traditional organizational structure hierarchy and is just decentralized and the power is distributed among self-organizing team and circles. Roles are definitely dynamic in contrary to the roles and definitions that were defined in the traditional structure, and team members are self-organizing. Instead of having top-down hierarchical structure, there are just the power is distributed and employees have autonomy. This one is needed in this volatile market and volatile environment, because they need to just make good decisions. They need to just have autonomy to be able to just make good decisions and implement it. So it's really important to just for organization to be fluid, agile, and with constant iterations. So the balance structure that is in line with the innovative technology and the resilient strategy is one that we need for today's environment and today's market.
Thank you. Mr. Eric.
So when we talked, I guess we're talking about structure. When we talk about structure, there tends to be a lot of arguments that say, what's the best structure? You should do this, you should do that. It doesn't really matter. The idea is you are executing a strategy. You've got a team, a resilient team. They're not only solving problems right now, they're solving problems in the future. And you need to organize that team to be effective. So what are you worried about? Well, one is you're worried about to control direction for changes. If you need to make change, you need to have some structure, whether you call it hierarchy, that says, all right, everybody, right now on this date, we are turning left. And then after that, we're going to turn right. We're going to go faster and slower. You also need lots of information sharing. So if you're too busy running that down a hierarchical pipe, you have trouble getting all that information you talked about with all your sensors going, because the hierarchy structure is not listening. It's made for moving these things. So now you've got this environment where you want people to talk together. And then the other thing is, which parts of your strategy do you need people to work together and take action sooner than later? What can you define specific? What do you need to define specifically, and what don't you? Like if your customer response is important, you may have a team that's totally structured to do customer response, or it may be R&D, or it may be, you may have all these agencies and you need to decide how much autonomy do you get them to get the job done fast and together, and how much communication do they need to have with marketing and research and development, so that this idea of information flow is very critical. This idea of direction and control, like in Stan's example, if you've got a ocean tanker, an aircraft carrier, and you're trying to say, all right, we're going to turn now in engineering and the steering, are all on different things. The rudder, not going to work too well. So you have to say, when do we need to take helm? And something I'm very interested in at the moment is, how do you switch between one structure than the other? How do you go? Because again, it's studying military is like that. When you do the strategic planning, that's a very hierarchical event. What do we do? It's more like why? Why do we care? And then you start moving to the operationals, which is how are we going to conduct that? We're not actually conducting it, but now you start seeing hierarchy, but you start seeing these individual units. But when it comes to actual tactical operations, you got people doing submarine stuff over here and air stuff over here and logistics over here. And they're pretty much operating independently, because they can take all kinds of jolts and keep going. So for me, the structure looks at a couple factors. One is, when do you need to suddenly tell everybody we're going to turn, and how do you implement? Because it doesn't have to be all, you don't always have to do that. It doesn't have to be this day-to-day thing. So what part of that do you need to direct? The other part is, what information flow do you need to go all over the place? And the third thing is, what do you need to identify as key purposes that people need to be able to execute on their own? And the real key of that is, you may not be doing that within an organization. These same kind of flows and hierarchies and purposes can go from your vendors, your customers, your partners. So I think you really just need to think about mapping out strategic execution down from the conceptual to physically how it's going to be done, and realize that if I move it, if we create this rigid hierarchy and the world moves, you can't deal individually with all these rapid I mean, you could imagine if we were all playing in the stock market and everything had to go to Sharif first before anybody made any decision, we'd get like 2 trades, the market would be closed. On the other hand, if we're trying to decide how much money we're going to invest overall, well, that's something you might want to control. So to me, those are the key things need to look at is, the differentiating purpose, information, and control are critical factors.
Thank you, Mr. Mo.
Well,
Mr. Mo.
Now we're finally addressing the structure of our organization. Right? So, as I hinted before, we're going to talk about holacracy, and Eric and Farnas did not disappoint. They did bring that up. What that is if you want a resilient organization, your organization needs to be, well, there are 2 ways to achieve resilience, right? The common sense way of thinking, right? First way is you become thick, right? you put on armors and you just sit there and no one can hurt you. But that's not really a sustainable solution. You put on the thickest armor in the world, people can slowly but surely chip it away because you are too heavy to move. So that leaves the other way, being agile, being able to know what's going on and being able to act fast. And that is what holacracy is trying to do. And by the way, holacracy is a weird word, and if you type it into a Word document, it will actually flag it as a misspelling word, but it's not. It's really a combination word. It's become accuracy means power structure, and hollow means wholesomeness or holland. Right? It means something is both in itself an individual and as a part of a whole organization, and that's a very ancient term. But beyond the schematics, what does it really mean behind that big word, that weird word? It means each individual should have the autonomy to act or to sense and to even change the organization so that the organization is changeable. And by definition, if it's changeable, it's agile. And by definition, if it's sensible, it can sense things in its environment from all angles, it's agile. It's be able to react to what is going on in its environment. And that is why holacracy is such an attractive idea. Once it's published, everybody in the management science, not management science, management not what's the word for that? In the academia and other academic who study management get excited. They are all jumping on board. This was developed about 5 years ago, and people are still riding the hype. But when I say hype, I don't mean it's just a hype, because there is something to it, and the idea is not new. It's just newly packaged in a form that the Silicon Valley guys can actually understand. And it's the author actually using a metaphor and saying your organization is an app and we need to add features to it. He used languages like that. But in reality, that idea traced back to almost 100 years ago, when people first come up with this idea where the members of the organization actually make the decision about the organization instead of the owners of it, just one guy to make a decision. Because that is not agile. And by definition, doesn't matter how much money, how much cash you have, how much armor, how much reserve you put on an organization, it just make it more rigid. And a rigid organization, we know, is not a sustainable organization.
Thank you. Dr. Stan Foster.
The only thing, in looking at all the graphs and everything else, I think we see these various major items that we usually connect by a little arrow, right? And then they all connect to each other. And those little connecting points are, I think, is the most important, non-recognized enough, which is communication. And and it has to be effective communication. But I've seen many organizations that go under because they don't have good communication. They're too structured. I have seen very few go under that over communicate. And again, when they over communicate, is that it's so loosely structured that people are not really communicating. They're gossiping. They're socializing. They're not really communicating with each other. So I do think, and I saw this. I came from, before I got involved with the school, I was in the motion picture business, and we used to, call it Murphy's Law. Whatever could go wrong would go wrong at the worst possible time. And when I was there, I was a motion picture production company is like a small city, and you've got all these various elements, and the communication tool was a walkie-talkie, and I wanted 50 walkie-talkies. I could never get 50 walkie-talkies because the people above me said, we can't spend that much money on those walkie-talkies. Until you're in a big shot, it's costing you hundreds of $1,000s a minute, and all of a sudden the little guy at the far end of the shot, a mile away, didn't get a walkie-talkie, and now can't keep that truck out of the shot, and you've ruined a shot, and you've just wasted maybe $300,000, $400,000. That's a very practical example of, you have to be really on top of communication, and know in your business when the communication, what channels are absolutely necessary, what ones cannot be done without. But again, over communication, I would suggest that, especially for smaller companies. Sometimes, you think everybody is on the same page. It's not bad. I've seen companies that are very effective that have a small 10-minute meeting every morning just to get everybody on the same page. Don't assume. In law school, they say there's two asses in assume. And an ass is an uninformed person. Okay. And that's ASS, and it's you and me. That's assume. That's what you do when you assume. You don't communicate well, and you have your chances for failure go up astronomically. So again, communication to me is a very important factor.
Thank you, Dr. Stan Fosters. Mr. Chairman, Home Turner, sir, what do you want to add for today?
Well, just getting back to resiliency, and to recap my overview of resiliency is based on planning. Always expect the unexpected. Always basically prepare for the worst. If it never happens, you're always ahead. When you're a small company, whether it's a natural disaster or a pandemic or even an economic crash, you always have to be prepared for those things as a small business, and have your plan B and plan C. So I would suggest very strongly, in the world of small business, which is our realm, is to plan. Don't plan, and you don't fail to plan. You don't plan to fail, you fail to plan. And the plan is the most important thing, and that don't sway, don't go off in one direction or the other, stay to your plan.
There's Home diverted to 5 P's. Proper planning prevents poor performance, right? That's always been one that stuck with me.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yes. Yes, thank you. This is actually a very good discussion in terms of the resilience. Yes, and I'm sure our audience really enjoyed today's sessions. So before I go for the final discussions, I just want to recognize some of the important things that World Talent Economy Forum, Asia Research and Development Institute, Al Noor Academy, we are working together. We are trying to developing very valuable content for the young community. Already we are connecting, and we make contract in between different developing nations, country like Indonesia, country like Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and already we are getting the targets that in between next year in offline, with the help of governments like education ministry of different countries, different Muslim leaders, as well as university, school, college, and corporation, we get involved with some of the big corporations, and we will reach with our content 100 million peoples in between next 3 years in offline. And already like different government actually supporting us, and especially I do want to give special thanks to this guest, because many times they are supporting us with their knowledge, with their strategy, with their partnerships. And 12th of December we actually achieve one of the important things just in between. I want to say 7 and 8 month initiative from the global think tank, transdisciplinary agora and future discussions from USA. They recognize World Talent Economy Forum as a futuristic leaders. Beside us, actually, Johannesburg University Vice Chancellors, Professor Charlie from Harvard University, they also win the same category. So I just get this award recognitions. I just want to share. It's a very uh, inspirational for World Talent Economy Forums, and I want to give special thanks to our guests, those who always support us whenever I request them, even morning, early in the morning, whatever the time, they always support us. And these achievements actually I want to share with you. And okay, sorry, I just get this certifications, so that's why I'm sharing with our audience. And I want to give special thanks to our audience for your continuous support, and different universities, different governments, different corporations, those who are supporting us, I want to give special thanks. And hopefully California Miramar University, as well as Pacific Crime Business Council, they are very big and they are very experienced. So with their collaborations and support, hopefully we can achieve more. And this is not only like dream. We are doing really hard works, and we are getting many support like Transcom Bangladesh, like United Groups, like Daffodil Educations Groups, Cambrian Education Group here, Petronas, Sunway, Muslim communities, many international Islamic University, University of Malaya, many university, they are actually supporting us, and government supporting us. So hopefully with the help of California Miramar University and Pacific Rim Business Council, World Talent Economy Forums will change human lives. This is our objective. Like today you discuss about corporate resilience. Our target is that we will introduce your content at least next 7 days, at least 10,000 students. So already they are sharing our content in the classroom in different remote area. They are sharing your information and valuable information. Different government official they using in the planning ministry, how they can develop their planning and everything. So hopefully our next year initiative will be very much effective, and your continuous support is very much important for World Talent Economy Forums. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. I want to start with Mr. Mo, then Mr. Eric, then Dr. Stan Foster, then Madam, and then Homestoners, and finally Dr. Ali Goabadi. I want to start with Mr. Mo.
Well, I have went through basically every aspect there is to structuring a company or to make it resilient. Thanks to Farnas. She really did a good job on the frameworking this whole discussion. And I guess that is basically what her world is right now. She's razor focused on the resilience of organizations. And for that, I just want to give a shout out to Farnas and thank you for coming, Farnas. And you bring a breath of fresh air to this discussion that will help. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Eric.
So we didn't really talk about operations a lot, but that's okay. We hit the most important thing, which I think is the resilient culture. And in preparing your team, even if it's just you, for resilient culture, it's that awareness that change will happen, but uncertainty is one of the biggest things. I mean, think about if you get a punch, the first thing you do is you shock and you just can't move unless you're expecting a punch. That's why boxers, martial arts, get punched. So okay, it's a punch. The other thing that helps kill that uncertainty, besides training people about uncertainty, is engaging them in the possible solutions. If you're part of that process of identifying and planning, you some of the pain and terror goes away, because you're not just thinking about caught off guard and locked, and you're not just thinking about, oh, how terrible. You're in the habit of thinking, what do we do? I mean, I can think of being in some emergencies, which you go, okay, we tried A, let's move to B. The world's falling apart. You don't have resources, and you could be trained. I mean, the fire departments do that. The police, military, emergency management. You know, you're more into the act of identifying and moving on. Even when you listen to planes that have gone down, pilots are very calm. They're not screaming or locked up. They're going, all right, we tried A, let's move to B. Anybody have suggest C? Okay, let's try that. And you can actually train a resilient workforce that way through expectations, involvement and engagement, and through skills acquisition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Dr. Stan Foster.
Well, I want to echo what Eric just said, and again, thank you for your innovative original work. It's very insightful, and I think it's a really good diagram to follow for most companies. And to go with what Professor Westwood said, don't be afraid as you're going through the challenges of your resilience. You're hit and you're off balance, and you have to judge and take all of these things into consideration, and maybe perhaps you need to change your business. Again, a lot of people are maybe resistant to change their business, but if it's not working, or suddenly the dynamic of the entire environment has changed, don't rule that out. And sometimes a small change can really make a tremendous difference onto your bottom line and be the difference between failure and success. So please keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me today, for just giving me this opportunity to talk about one of the most important concepts in today's environment. As conclusion for this meeting, I just wanted to elaborate on the resilience, that the resilience is about surviving and recuperating from challenging circumstances. So we need to just become resilient and use the resilience strategy and culture as a strategic objectives intended to support ourselves to survive and prosper. Highly resilient organizations are more agile, more flexible, adaptive, robust, and competitive. We have to just make sure that we have the harmonious assimilation of resilience into our organization and our ecosystem. And we need to just have to keep in mind that the culmination of integrating resilience into those elements and aspects that we discussed in this chapter, that in this session, like culture, strategy, structure, and operation, can really help us to become resilient and survive and recuperate from every environmental jolt. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for today's excellent discussions. Really, today's session was very much focused, and I'm sure that our audience will get a very good outcomes. And definitely, we always focus on the quality of work. And now we have our philosopher, Dr. Ali Guabadi. He is more than a scholar for us.
I guess you're too kind, but I will never let you prove to me something I'm not. I'm not a philosopher, but thank you so much. I know this is meant with good intention. So, what do we do? Manage your organization, your company, your life in agreement with nature. That is the most important aspect. Also, these are the 10 commandments of so-called resilience. Manage by virtue. Keep in mind, virtue is a necessary condition for success, for endurance. That's why it is the highest of all goals. If you want to be able to be resilient, you need to be virtuous. Focus on what you can control and accept what you cannot. Make sure you distinguish between these two aspects because they are very essential. What you can control, you should do something. And if there's nothing you can do, you better not waste any worrying time on it. That's why one needs to be able to distinguish between what's good, what's bad, and what's preferred, right? So you need to be able to say what do you prefer to do and what don't matter. Don't waste your time on things that do not matter. That's and it's most important. This is not about talk. This is where you have to not just walk the walk, but also walk the talk. That means you need to take action. This is the reality. If you know something could go wrong, you need to take action to be prepared for. Also, always and always practice misfortune. Ask yourself, play this strategy game. What could go wrong? And listen to what Dr. Foster was saying. What could go wrong will go wrong. You better plan for it accordingly. Always, always be sure to add a reserve clause to your planned actions. Don't think it's going to go exactly as you have planned. Things have their own. So you plan and the world plans. And guess what? The plan that will be successful is the world's plan. And that's what amor fati comes. Amor fati means what? Love everything that happens, no matter of the good or bad aspect of it. Therefore, you need to love what takes because life is not about winning. Life is about learning, and you learn more from mistakes than you learn from success. And that's how you become a resilient individual where you can turn an obstacle into an opportunity, right? So the name of this game is perception. Perception is the key to your success, to your resilience. You will fall down, I guarantee that. Make sure you consider that a gained experience. And most important of all, be mindful. Be mindful. Know who you are, where you are, why you are, what's your purpose, and what's the greatest good that you need to work on. It goes back to the fact that you're human beings. Be a good human being. And believe you me, if you're a good human being, everything else will follow. Be resilient and stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Goyabadi, for a brilliant discussion for today. I'm sure many small organizations, even big organizations and government can learn a lot about the resilience. I'm sure they can make their strategy and they can survive in these COVID situations. So thank you for your valuable contributions. And next sessions, we come up with this Industry 4.0. I'm sure our audience will learn a lot of things. And I want to give special thanks from my core of my heart, how you supporting World Talent Economy Forums. And I'm sure it will be we are also trying to reach many of the youth community. We will work together and we will make it successful program. Thank you for your valuable contribution. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.